The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished exterior of First National Bank as Marcus Thompson guided his Honda Civic into the parking lot. It was a peaceful Tuesday morning in downtown Atlanta, just past 9:30 a.m., when most of the early rush had died down. The car, that only 3 years old and well-maintained, was deliberately modest, a choice that reflected Marcus's careful approach to wealth and success. At 35 years old, Marcus had already achieved what many would consider the American dream. His tech startup, Secure Flow Solutions, had recently sold for an impressive $75 million to a major software corporation. But looking at him now, dressed in clean but casual dark blue jeans, a navy polo shirt, and comfortable walking shoes, no one would guess he was worth 8 figures. Marcus checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, more out of habit than vanity. His short-trimmed beard was neat, and his wire-rimmed glasses sat perfectly straight on his nose. He reached into the back seat and grabbed his leather messenger bag, which contained all the documents he'd need to open a new business account for his next venture. The parking lot was half empty, with just a few expensive cars scattered about, mostly German luxury vehicles that probably belonged to the bank's management team. Marcus smiled to himself, thinking about the Porsche 911 sitting in his garage at home. Today, though, he'd chosen the Civic deliberately. Experience had taught him valuable lessons about first impressions and people's prejudices. As he walked toward the bank's entrance, Marcus noticed the immaculate landscaping, perfectly trimmed hedges, and freshly planted seasonal flowers in the bank's signature colors of blue and gold. The morning breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming jasmine from the nearby planters. It was the kind of detail that spoke of the bank's attention to maintaining a prestigious image. The glass doors slid open silently, welcoming him into the cool, climate-controlled interior. The lobby was impressive, with its high ceilings, marble floors, and elaborate crown molding. Classical music played softly in the background, creating an atmosphere of refined sophistication. A massive chandelier hung in the center, its crystal pieces catching and scattering the morning light. 3 tellers stood behind the counter, each helping customers with their transactions. To the right, a young security guard nodded politely as Marcus entered. The left side of the lobby housed a row of offices with glass walls, where bank officers assisted clients with more complex banking needs. Marcus approached the reception desk, where a young woman sat behind a computer screen. Her nameplate read Jessica Martinez. She looked up and offered a practiced smile, though her eyes briefly registered surprise, a micro-expression Marcus had become adept at noticing over the years. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice warm and professional. "I'd like to speak with someone about opening a business account, please." Jessica glanced at her computer screen, then back at Marcus. "Do you have an appointment today, sir?" "No, I don't," Marcus replied calmly. "I was hoping to speak with someone who could help me understand your business banking services. I'm planning to launch a new company and would like to establish a relationship with a reliable financial institution." Jessica's fingers moved across her keyboard. "Let me see who's available. The branch manager, Ms. Miller, has an opening right now. Would you like to speak with her?" Marcus nodded, maintaining his pleasant demeanor. "That would be perfect, thank you." As Jessica picked up the phone to announce his arrival, Marcus took a moment to observe his surroundings more carefully. The walls were adorned with large photographs showcasing the bank's history, its founding in 1925, the original building, and various milestone moments. He noticed that in all the historical photos displaying the bank's leadership, not a single person of color appeared. Marcus took a seat in one of the plush leather chairs in the waiting area, placing his messenger bag beside him. He pulled out his phone and, with practiced discretion, activated his recording app, a habit he'd developed after numerous similar situations in his business career. While he hoped it wouldn't be necessary, experience had taught him to always be prepared. The air felt slightly heavy with anticipation as he waited. Through the glass walls, he could see Sarah Miller, the bank manager, finishing up a phone call in her office. She was a middle-aged woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, wearing a crisp blue suit that matched the bank's corporate colors. Little did she know that the next few minutes would change not only her career, but the entire banking institution's future approach to customer service and equality. Sarah Miller took her time finishing her phone call, making Marcus wait for nearly 10 minutes. Through the glass walls of her office, she occasionally glanced in his direction, her expression growing more dismissive with each look. Finally, she hung up the phone and nodded to Jessica, who approached Marcus with a practiced smile. "Miss Miller will see you now," Jessica said, gesturing toward the office. Marcus rose smoothly from his chair, gathering his messenger bag. As he walked toward Sarah Miller's office, you could feel the eyes of other bank employees following him. The click of his shoes against the marble floor seemed unusually loud in the quiet lobby. Sarah remained seated as Marcus entered her office, not bothering to stand or offer her hand. She gestured vaguely toward the chair across from her desk, her wedding ring catching the light as she did so. The office was meticulously arranged, with degrees from prestigious universities prominently displayed on the wall behind her, along with various banking certifications and awards. "How can I help you today?" Sarah asked, her tone carrying the same chill as the office's overactive air conditioning. She hadn't even asked for his name. "Good morning, Miss Miller," Marcus replied professionally. "I'm interested in opening a business account. I'm launching a new tech venture and—" "Do you have an appointment?" Sarah interrupted, though Jessica had already told her he didn't. "No, but your receptionist mentioned you had availability," Marcus answered calmly. "I can come back another time if that would be more convenient." Sarah's lips tightened into a thin line. She glanced pointedly at his casual clothes, then at his simple messenger bag. "What kind of business did you say this was?" Marcus reached into his bag. "I have all the documentation here. It's a software development company focusing on financial security solutions. I recently sold my previous company and—" "I see." Sarah cut him off again, not even looking at the documents he was trying to show her. "Well, mister?" She paused, waiting for his name with raised eyebrows. "Thompson. Marcus Thompson." "Mr. Thompson," she continued, pronouncing his name with barely concealed disdain. "First National Bank caters to a certain clientele. We have very specific requirements for our business accounts. Minimum deposits, revenue thresholds, credit scores." She let her voice trail off meaningfully. Marcus kept his expression neutral, though he noticed his phone in his bag was still recording. "I'm confident I can meet your requirements. Perhaps you could share the specific criteria." Sarah shifted in her leather chair, her discomfort with his persistence becoming apparent. "Our business accounts typically serve established enterprises. From your appearance, I'm not sure we'd be the right fit. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the local credit union. They have more flexible requirements." The implied racism in her words hung heavy in the air. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see several employees pretending not to watch the interaction, though their furtive glances gave them away. "Ms. Miller," Marcus said, his voice remaining steady, "are you declining to even review my application? I'd like to understand the specific reason." Sarah's face flushed slightly. "Sir, I'm simply trying to save us both time. Our institutional clients maintain certain standards. We pride ourselves on serving a particular caliber of business owner." She emphasized the word caliber while giving him another dismissive look. Marcus slowly pulled out his business card and placed it on her desk. It was simple but elegant, with the logo of his previous company, which had been featured in Fortune magazine just last month. "I see. And what caliber would that be, exactly?" Sarah glanced at the card but didn't pick it up. "I think we're done here," she said firmly. "Security can show you out if needed." Marcus stood up, his movement deliberate and dignified. "That won't be necessary. Thank you for your time, Ms. Miller. I'll be sure to share the details of our interaction with your regional director. I believe his name is James Wilson. We're actually scheduled to meet next week about implementing our security software across your branches, but I suppose that won't be necessary now." For the first time, Sarah's composed facade cracked slightly. Her eyes darted to the business card on her desk, then back to Marcus's face as the implications of her behavior began to dawn on her. "Have a good day," Marcus said politely, turning to leave. As he walked through the lobby, he could hear Sarah shuffling papers on her desk, likely finally reading his business card. The security guard, who had been watching the entire interaction, opened the door for Marcus with a sympathetic nod. The morning sun felt warmer now as Marcus walked back to his Honda Civic, his phone safely recording the entire interaction in his bag. He had learned long ago that the best response to prejudice wasn't anger, it was strategic action, and Sarah Miller had just given him everything he needed to create meaningful change. Sitting in his Honda Civic, Marcus Thompson pulled out his phone and opened his recent recordings. The interaction with Sarah Miller had been captured perfectly, her dismissive tone and thinly veiled racist comments preserved in crystal clear audio. He forwarded the recording to his email for safekeeping, then picked up his phone to make a call. "Janet, it's Marcus," he spoke into the phone. "Cancel my meetings for the next 2 hours. Something just came up at First National Bank that needs immediate attention." His executive assistant's voice came through clearly. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. Should I contact Mr. Wilson at the regional office about next week's security software presentation?" "Not yet," Marcus replied, a slight smile forming on his face. "But please send me the contract proposal we were planning to present. The one worth $47 million. As Marcus ended the call, his phone lit up with notifications. His recent social media post about selling his company, Secure Flow Solutions, for $75 million had garnered thousands of likes and shares. The irony wasn't lost on him. Just minutes ago, Sarah Miller had judged him incapable of maintaining a basic business account. He started his car and drove 15 minutes across town to his main office, a modern glass building in Atlanta's tech district. The security guard greeted him by name as he pulled into his reserved parking spot, right next to his rarely used Porsche 911. The spot sign read, "Marcus Thompson, CEO, Thompson Technologies." Inside his top-floor office, Marcus settled into his leather chair and opened his laptop. The wall behind him was covered with framed achievements: his MIT computer science degree, multiple tech innovation awards, and photos of him with various banking industry leaders. One picture showed him shaking hands with the CEO of First National Bank's parent company at a cybersecurity conference last year. "Ricardo," Marcus called to his legal counsel through the intercom. "Could you join me for a moment?" Ricardo Martinez entered the office shortly after, carrying a tablet. "What's up, Marcus?" Marcus played the recording from the bank. Ricardo's expression grew increasingly serious as he listened to Sarah Miller's dismissive treatment and thinly veiled racist remarks. "And here's the best part," Marcus said, pulling up his company's database. "First National Bank isn't just losing our potential software contract. They're currently using an outdated version of our security system in 60% of their branches. The renewal for those branches is due next month." Ricardo whistled low. "That's going to be a problem for them, especially since your company holds 3 essential patents for banking security protocols. They can't simply switch to another provider without a complete system overhaul." Marcus nodded, pulling up more documents on his screen. "And look at this. Sarah Miller's branch was scheduled to be the pilot location for our new fraud detection system, the one that's been getting rave reviews in the banking industry." He leaned back in his chair, looking at the Seattle skyline through his office windows. As a board member of 2 other national banks and a regular speaker at financial technology conferences, Marcus knew his experience today wasn't unique, but he was in a position to do something about it. "Ricardo, draft 2 letters," Marcus instructed. "First, a formal complaint to the regional director, James Wilson. Include the audio recording and reference our ongoing business relationships. Second, prepare a press release about our new pilot program for fraud detection software, but change the participating bank to their main competitor." Ricardo typed notes on his tablet. "What about the discrimination aspect? Do you want to make that public?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. First, let's see how they handle this internally. I'm more interested in creating systemic change than public shaming." He pulled up his calendar, where next week's meeting with the bank's regional director was highlighted. The agenda included discussing the $47 million software contract, branch security upgrades, and their partnership expansion plans. Sometimes, Marcus said thoughtfully, the best way to fight discrimination is to show people exactly what their prejudices cost them. Just then, his phone buzzed with an email notification. The regional director's office was requesting an urgent meeting. Marcus smiled. Word had traveled fast. "One more thing," Marcus told Ricardo. "Pull up Sarah Miller's branch performance records for the past year. I have a feeling this isn't the first time she's turned away qualified customers based on appearance. We just might be the first ones with enough influence to do something about it." The afternoon sun glinted off the awards on his wall as Marcus began preparing for a meeting that would change not just one bank branch, but potentially the banking industry's approach to discrimination. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, James Wilson's office had called Marcus Thompson 4 times. The regional director of First National Bank was clearly in panic mode, but Marcus deliberately let the calls go to voicemail. Each message sounded more desperate than the last. Marcus sat in his conference room, surrounded by his executive team. The large screen on the wall displayed Sarah Miller's branch performance statistics for the past year. The numbers told a disturbing story. Loan approval rates for minority applicants were significantly lower than the bank's other branches, and there was an unusual pattern of rejected business account applications from minority entrepreneurs. "Look at this," said Lisa Chen, Marcus's data analyst, pointing to a chart. Her branch has turned away minority-owned businesses at 3 times the rate of other branches in the same area, and these weren't small businesses either. Some had annual revenues in the millions. Marcus nodded, taking notes on his tablet. "And how many of those businesses ended up going to our other banking clients?" "At least 60% of them," Lisa replied. "Community Trust Bank and Regional Finance have seen a significant increase in minority business clients, all coming from Sarah Miller's service area." The conference room door opened, and Ricardo Martinez entered with a fresh update. "Marcus, the regional director just sent over an urgent email. They're offering to fast-track our software contract and increase the deal value by 20%. Marcus smiled slightly, but trying to buy our silence. "Forward the email to our legal team." He turned to address the room. "What we have here is an opportunity not just to correct one person's behavior, but to create lasting change in the banking industry." Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from David Chen, a fellow tech entrepreneur who had faced similar discrimination at the same branch 3 months ago. Marcus had asked him to share his experience. "David's willing to go on record," Marcus announced to the room. "He has documentation of Sarah Miller refusing to even review his business loan application, despite his company being valued at $12 million. The team spent the next hour compiling evidence and testimonies. 3 other successful minority business owners had come forward with similar stories about Sarah Miller's branch. Each incident followed the same pattern: immediate dismissal based on appearance, suggestions to try smaller banks or credit unions, and no attempt to review their qualifications. At exactly 4:30 p.m., Marcus finally returned James Wilson's calls. The regional director answered on the first ring. "Marcus, thank you for calling back." Wilson's voice carried barely concealed anxiety. "There seems to be a misunderstanding with one of our branch managers." "A misunderstanding?" Marcus kept his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Wilson, I have an audio recording of your branch manager suggesting I'm not the right caliber of client for your bank. I also have data showing a clear pattern of discrimination at that branch, and statements from other business owners who've had similar experiences." Silence filled the line for a moment before Wilson spoke again. "We take these allegations very seriously, Marcus. What would you like us to do?" "I'm sending over a proposal," Marcus replied. "My team has prepared a comprehensive plan for addressing discriminatory practices across your entire banking system. It includes mandatory training, regular audits, and a complete overhaul of your customer service protocols." "And the software contract?" Wilson asked cautiously. "That depends entirely on how you handle this situation," Marcus answered. "I'm not interested in special treatment for myself or a quick fix. I want systematic change that will prevent this from happening to anyone else." The email with Marcus's proposal had just landed in Wilson's inbox. The document outlined specific steps: an independent audit of all branches, new diversity training programs, revised application review procedures, and regular monitoring of approval rates across different demographic groups. "One more thing," Marcus added. "Sarah Miller needs to be held accountable, not just moved to another branch or quietly let go. This needs to be a clear message that discrimination has real consequences." Wilson sighed heavily. "I understand. We'll begin implementing these changes immediately. And Marcus, I'm truly sorry about your experience today." "Don't be sorry," Marcus replied. "Be better. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss the implementation details." As he ended the call, Marcus looked at his team. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the conference room, but their work was far from over. This wasn't just about one bank manager or one branch anymore. It was about changing the entire system, one policy at a time. The next morning, First National Bank's corporate office was buzzing with activity. A team of investigators had arrived early, setting up in a large conference room with boxes of documents and multiple computer screens. The bank's internal audit team had worked through the night, pulling records from Sarah Miller's branch dating back 3 years. Marcus Thompson sat at the head of the conference table, reviewing the preliminary findings with James Wilson and the bank's executive team. The evidence was more damaging than anyone had expected. "These security camera footage clips are particularly concerning," said Rachel Martinez, the lead investigator, as she played selected videos on the main screen. They showed multiple instances of Sarah Miller's interactions with minority customers over the past month alone. The pattern was unmistakable: rushed meetings, dismissive body language, and quick rejections without reviewing documentation. One video showed a young Asian woman in business attire being turned away within 2 minutes of sitting down. "That's Dr. Emily Chen," Marcus noted. "She owns 3 successful dental practices in the city. She ended up taking her business to Community Trust Bank instead." The bank's compliance officer, Thomas Wright, cleared his throat nervously. "We've also discovered that Ms. Miller's branch has the highest rejection rate for minority loan applications in our entire network. The disparity is significant." On a large whiteboard, the team had mapped out a timeline of complaints and incidents. Red dots marked each reported case of discrimination, creating a disturbing cluster around Sarah Miller's tenure as branch manager. But it wasn't just about Sarah anymore. The investigation had uncovered systemic issues throughout the bank's operations. "Look at this," James Wilson said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "Even our marketing materials show a clear bias. Out of 200 promotional images used in the past year, less than 10% featured people of color. And our branch locations, there's a clear pattern of underservicing minority neighborhoods." As they discussed the findings, Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. Someone had recognized him from the bank and posted about the incident on social media. The post was going viral, with hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences at various bank branches. "Mr. Thompson," a young intern rushed into the room. "Channel 5 News is outside. They're requesting a statement about the discrimination allegations." The bank's PR team sprang into action, but Marcus raised his hand to stop them. "No prepared statements. The truth is what it is. Let's show them what we're doing to fix it." The investigation expanded beyond Sarah Miller's immediate actions. The team discovered that several other branches had similar patterns, though less obvious. Employee training materials were outdated, hiring practices showed unconscious bias, and customer service protocols lacked clear anti-discrimination guidelines. By midday, more people had come forward. A local business group representing minority entrepreneurs had compiled a list of 30 cases where members had faced similar treatment at various First National branches. Each story added another piece to the puzzle, revealing how deeply rooted the problems were. "This isn't just about banking," Marcus explained to the investigation team. "It's about economic opportunity. When banks discriminate, they're not just turning away individuals. They're stifling business growth, job creation, and community development." The social media storm continued to grow. #BankingWhileBlack was trending locally, with people sharing their own banking discrimination stories from across the country. Other banks began issuing statements about their commitment to fair banking practices, clearly worried about facing similar scrutiny. Sarah Miller, meanwhile, had been placed on administrative leave. When confronted with the evidence, she had tried to defend her actions as maintaining the bank's standards. Her employee file revealed several complaints that had been ignored or dismissed by previous management. "We need to make this right," James Wilson announced to the room. "Not just with public statements and policy changes, but with real, measurable actions." Marcus nodded in agreement. "The investigation is just the beginning. Real change happens in the implementation of new policies and the transformation of the banking culture." As the day drew to a close, the investigation team had compiled a comprehensive report documenting hundreds of cases of potential discrimination. The findings would serve as a foundation for the sweeping changes that were about to transform not just First National Bank, but potentially the entire banking industry's approach to equality and fairness. Outside the corporate office, news vans continued to gather. The story had grown beyond one incident with a racist bank manager. It had become a catalyst for exposing and addressing systemic discrimination in banking. and Marcus Thompson was determined to ensure that this investigation would lead to lasting change. The consequences of Sarah Miller's discriminatory actions hit First National Bank like a tidal wave. 1 week after Marcus Thompson's encounter, the bank's board of directors called an emergency meeting at their headquarters. The bank's stock had dropped 12% since the story broke, wiping out hundreds of millions in market value. Sarah Miller sat nervously in a small conference room, surrounded by HR representatives and legal counsel. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The investigation had uncovered emails where she instructed her staff to be extra careful with certain applications, using coded language to discriminate against minority applicants. Ms. Miller, the HR director. The story reached Washington, D.C., where lawmakers began discussing new legislation to strengthen bank anti-discrimination laws. Several civil rights organizations announced plans to conduct nationwide studies of banking discrimination. As Sarah Miller cleaned out her office under security supervision, she watched a new billboard being installed across the street. It showed a diverse group of business owners with the tagline, "First National Bank, where every dream gets a fair chance." The bank's stock price started to recover as investors responded positively to the changes. But more importantly, the incident had sparked a national conversation about banking discrimination and forced the entire industry to confront its biases. Marcus Thompson's phone kept ringing with interview requests from major media outlets, but he declined them all. He wasn't interested in publicity, he wanted results. And as he watched Sarah Miller leave the bank for the last time, carrying her box of personal items, he knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger change. 3 months after the incident with Sarah Miller, First National Bank's main branch looked very different. The once conservative lobby now displayed vibrant artwork from local minority artists. The newly hired branch manager, Michael Rodriguez, had transformed the atmosphere from intimidating to welcoming. Marcus Thompson walked through the doors, this time wearing a tailored suit, though he noticed with satisfaction that the staff treated every customer with the same respect, regardless of their appearance. He was there for the first meeting of the bank's new Diversity Advisory Board, which he had agreed to chair. "Welcome, Mr. Thompson," Michael greeted him warmly. The new manager had an impressive track record of community banking and had been specifically chosen for his commitment to inclusive finance. The team is waiting upstairs. In the renovated conference room, 20 people sat around a large table, a diverse group of business leaders, community representatives, and banking executives. The walls displayed real-time data showing loan approval rates, new account openings, and customer satisfaction scores across all demographic groups. "Let's review our progress," Marcus began, pulling up the latest statistics. "In just 3 months, we've seen a 200% increase in minority-owned business accounts. Our loan approval rates are now consistent across all demographic groups, and customer satisfaction has reached an all-time high." The bank's new Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Patricia Washington, stood up to present the next phase of changes. "Our mandatory training program has reached 98% completion across all branches. But more importantly, we're seeing real behavioral changes." She clicked through slides showing the transformation. Every branch now had bilingual staff. Loan applications were reviewed by diverse committees. Marketing materials reflected the community's true diversity. Branch locations were being opened in previously underserved areas. Community financial literacy programs were running at full capacity. The consulting firm hired to monitor the changes presented their findings. "Employee engagement is up 45%, the representative reported. Staff members say they feel more confident handling diverse customers because they have better training and clearer guidelines." In the branch where Sarah Miller once turned people away, a young black entrepreneur was getting approved for her first business loan. The loan officer spent an hour explaining the terms and offering advice about business banking services. This same entrepreneur had been dismissed by Sarah just 4 months ago. Marcus watched through the glass walls as the loan documents were signed. "This is what real change looks like," he said to the board. "It's not just about avoiding discrimination. It's about actively creating opportunities." The bank's transformation had caught national attention. Other banks were sending representatives to study their new procedures. Industry publications were writing articles about the first national model of inclusive banking. Downstairs in the lobby, a community event was taking place. Local business owners who had previously been rejected by Sarah Miller had been invited back. Many were now successful clients, their stories featured on a wall display titled Community Success Stories. Our next initiative, Marcus announced to the board, is a mentorship program. We're pairing experienced business owners with new entrepreneurs, providing not just banking services but real business guidance. The technology integration that Marcus's company had originally planned was now complete, but with an added feature, an AI system that monitored for potential bias in banking decisions. If unusual patterns emerged in loan approvals or rejections, the system flagged them for review. Richard Harrison, the bank's president, shared the latest financial results. Despite initial concerns, the bank's new inclusive approach had led to growth. Deposits were up, loan defaults were down, and their customer base had expanded significantly. "We've learned something valuable," Richard admitted to the board. "Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was bad business. We were missing out on so many opportunities due to our biases." As the meeting concluded, Marcus received a text message. Another major bank had reached out, requesting consultation on implementing similar changes. The ripple effects were spreading across the industry. Outside the bank, a film crew was setting up. The bank's transformation was being documented as a case study for banking industry training. Sarah Miller's discrimination had unintentionally sparked a revolution in banking practices. Marcus watched as a diverse group of customers entered and exited the bank, all receiving the same professional service. The security guard, the same one who had witnessed his discrimination months ago, now led cultural sensitivity training for new employees. The change wasn't just superficial, it was fundamental. First National Bank had transformed from a symbol of discrimination to a model of inclusive banking, proving that doing the right thing was also good business. 1 year after Sarah Miller's discriminatory actions toward Marcus Thompson, First National Bank had become unrecognizable in the best possible way. The bank's transformation had created ripples throughout the entire banking industry, changing how financial institutions approach diversity and inclusion. On a bright morning, Marcus stood at a podium in the bank's newly renovated main hall, addressing a crowd of journalists, banking executives, and community leaders. Behind him, a large screen displayed the results of the past year's changes. "When I walked into this bank a year ago," Marcus began, "I experienced discrimination that had become all too common. Today, I'm proud to announce that First National Bank has become the nation's leading institution for minority business lending." The numbers told an impressive story. In just 1 year, minority business loans had increased by 400%. The bank had opened 15 new branches in underserved communities. Customer satisfaction scores had reached 98%. Employee diversity had doubled at all levels of management. The bank's stock price had risen 45%. Janet Brooks, the African-American woman who had replaced Sarah Miller as branch manager, stepped up to share her branch's success story. Under her leadership, the once troubled branch had become the bank's top performer in new business accounts. "We didn't just change policies," Janet explained to the audience. "We changed the entire culture of banking. Every customer who walks through our doors knows they'll be treated with respect and given a fair opportunity." In the audience, several familiar faces could be seen. The young Asian dentist who Sarah Miller had turned away now operated 5 successful practices, all financed through First National Bank. The black entrepreneur who had been dismissed was now teaching financial literacy classes in partnership with the bank. Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. The federal government had just passed the Fair Banking Act, legislation directly inspired by the changes at First National Bank. The new law required all banks to implement similar anti-discrimination measures and transparency requirements. "But our greatest success," Marcus continued, "isn't in the numbers. It's in the stories of the people we've helped." He gestured to a wall covered with photographs, successful business owners who had received their first loans under the bank's new policies. Sarah Miller's story had also taken an unexpected turn. After her firing, she had gone through extensive counseling and education about her biases. Now, she traveled to other banks, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and helping them identify and address discriminatory practices. The bank's training program had become an industry standard. Banking schools across the country used First National's case study to teach future bankers about the importance of inclusive banking practices. The AI monitoring system developed by Marcus's company was now used by hundreds of banks nationwide. Richard Harrison, the bank's president, approached the podium. When Mr. Thompson first exposed our failures, we had two choices: deny the problem or become part of the solution. Choosing to change wasn't just morally right, it transformed our bank into a stronger, more successful institution. In the lobby, a museum-style display showed the bank's journey. It included the original recording of Sarah Miller's discrimination, but also the stories of transformation and success that followed. The bank had chosen to own its past while celebrating its progress. Marcus's technology company had grown too, developing new tools to help banks identify and eliminate discriminatory practices. The software that Sarah Miller had dismissed him for was now an industry standard, used by 9 of the 10 largest banks in the country. As the ceremony concluded, a group of young minority entrepreneurs entered the bank. They were part of the bank's new mentorship program, paired with successful business owners who could guide their growth. The program had already helped launch 50 new businesses in its first year. The legacy of what happened here, Marcus said in his closing remarks, isn't about one person's discrimination or even one bank's transformation. It's about showing the world that inclusion isn't just the right thing to do. It's good business. Outside the bank, the sign that had once intimidated minority customers now read, First National Bank, where every dream matters. But more importantly, inside the bank, those words had become reality. A year after Sarah Miller's discrimination had exposed systemic banking bias, First National Bank had become more than just a financial institution. It had become a blueprint for change, proving that when institutions confronted their biases honestly and took decisive action, everyone benefited. The legacy of that one moment of discrimination had transformed into a movement that was changing the face of banking, one customer at a time.